2, 1.
Just under a decade ago, the Paris Agreement was established in 2015. Malaysia, alongside 195 signatories, have committed to reducing carbon emissions by 45% in 2030 and achieve a net zero by 2050. Since then, global progress has been admittedly skewed. The context for Malaysia's own journey to net zero has to be framed properly. Since 1750, Malaysia has contributed only 0.37% of carbon dioxide emissions. That means, from around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the likes of the United States have emitted 65 times more CO2 than us. Despite this less than 1% contribution, this administration refuses to think to shirk our global responsibility. We recognize not just the social impetus, but the need to demonstrate regional leadership. For us, this is about implementing thoughtful measures that secure a sustainable future for the people of Southeast Asia. To achieve this, it forces us to address the energy trilemma, establishing security, sustainability, and affordability. This means confronting hard realities. For example, we may be the 5th largest exporter of LNG in the world, but we are also importing about 30% to fuel our own electricity needs. This poses a serious question about our foreign dependence in powering local demands. Ladies and gentlemen, countering this lies in embracing energy transition and decarbonizing at scale. But the means of doing so varies from country to country. There are fundamentally two types of pathways that countries can really turn to. One path is policy-led. This is where countries can institutionalize sustainability reporting, establish green tax incentives, or legislate net zero commitments. It creates a progressive framework that nudges the ecosystem towards adopting sustainable practices. Whereas the second path is resource dependent. Countries embrace the potential of hydrogen, building EV capacity, and using sustainable aviation fuel, for example. It's about leveraging natural resources with technology to build the right kind of renewable energy infrastructures. Some countries favor one pathway over the other. Most tend to do a combination of the two with some trade-offs. But it is very rare for a country to do both at a high level. Those that do are poised to become climate leaders and regional energy hubs. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe Malaysia is well placed to do exactly that. Our biodiversity from land to sea has blessed us with a natural competitive advantage. And Boy Binik has elaborated at length on this. For example, our sunny climate has pushed us to be the 3rd largest manufacturer of solar panels in the world. Or, another example, how being the 2nd largest producer of palm oil makes it easier for us to embrace biomass as an alternative fuel source. Other resource-limited countries have had to compensate through more progressive policies. This is where Malaysia, unfortunately, has traditionally played catch-up. Our legislation tends to take time and isn't always benchmarked against the best practices. When this administration takes office, we look at how long a government previously brings from the ideation of a legislation to passing it in Parliament. Normally, it takes at least 4 years. It can take 10 years. And because of that, we have to ask this question. What's the point of having an abundance of resources if we can't have the right policies that unlock value and catapult us to the front? This is the question that this administration has sprinted in the last 2 years to manage. Since taking office, we are changing that now. I give you one example, CCUS. I think there's now a competition between different ministries to see who can bring the legislation fastest to make up for all the lost time in the last 10 years. NRES is going to bring Climate Change Act sometime next year. I'm glad that my ministry is going to beat NRES because we are bringing CCUS legislation at, I think, a record speed of 6 months. From the ideation, formulation, bring it all the way through the processes, and we're going to pass it next month, inshallah. So if you look at CCUS, going back to this blessed country of Malaysia that has so much resources, Malaysia is blessed with several high-quality storage sites. We are repurposing what was previously an extractive business and shifting towards injection and storage. Yet, as I mentioned before, despite the whole world is looking at us because we have this abundance of resources, previously we haven't had the right regulatory framework to crowd in investors and redefine a new supply chain. And as I mentioned, within a month from now, this administration will be tabling a CCUS bill to Parliament, the first of its kind in this country. And hopefully, the robust regulatory framework is benchmarked against several countries. We have been looking quite a lot of it, and benchmarked it against best practices from Europe, and has incorporated internationally recognized standards.